Hi, my name is Kevin Thomas W1DED, and this is Q5 Ham Radio. This is the first episode in a new how-to series on amateur radio contesting, where I'm joined by Pride K1RX. Together, we're walking you through contesting from the ground up, focusing on learning, progress, and long-term enjoyment of the hobby. In this episode, we start with the big picture, where contesting fits into amateur radio, why it accelerates learning, and how it deepens skill, curiosity, and connection over time. Q5 Ham Radio is supported by DX Engineering, helping operators build stations that grow with them. Welcome, Mark.
Thank you. Good to be here today.
Well, tell me what we're here to talk about today, Mark.
Talking about amateur radio and contesting, how they play together. I'll tell you how this whole thing got started for me. It was at the urging of some of my contest trainees. I think you're aware that I've been helping the youth get exposed to this aspect of the hobby, as well as elderly folks who wanted to try it out. And it was through their urging and their suggestion that I should share this experience that I've had. That's about 62 years worth of amateur radio experience. So I think there's a little bit to be told here. I wanted to also share the fact that with your amateur radio license, it truly opens up way more doors than I think most people realize. Certainly there's the activity of being on the air and talking to people and all that good stuff, but it opens the doors for things like more scientific exposure, programs that are out there, and these are things I've just recently learned about myself, where there's a group of hams that are working on monitoring weather and space weather propagation around the Arctic Circle, and just things I'd never even thought of. And of course, there's some of the older stuff that's out there, like the military affiliate radio service. You need an amateur license to do that, but you're actually operating outside the amateur bands, and you're passing important messages and such. It's really kind of an eye-opening thought when you realize this license can really open way more doors than you originally considered.
So one of the things I want to talk about, as you know, I've been back in ham radio now for 3 or 4 years,
right.
And there are so many different niches in our hobby. And a lot of people on the outside don't understand that. When they say ham radio, they assume we all do the same things. There are a lot of different places we could go. What is it about contesting that appeals to you? And I guess the question is, why should it appeal to other people?
I think when you look at the whole of amateur radio, and frankly, I have come to view it as a hobby with 50 hobbies within it. There are so many separate kinds of passions one can develop in this overarching theme of amateur radio that it's really quite remarkable. And one of the things that surfaced in my years of being in the hobby was the fun things that one can do in contesting, or the act of contesting, where you spend a weekend trying to talk to as many people as you can in as many different countries, on as many different frequencies, etc. That just opens up an incredible range of things that you can further dig into in the hobby. Something I recently was exposed to was a new ham that I met, only 3 years in the hobby, and he's been to my house and he's experienced the contesting training that I've kind of done. And he came back with an interesting theme about amateur radio, and frankly, it was something I'd never even considered for the 62 years I've been in the hobby. And he coined it as, 4 C's: connectivity, control, curiosity, and creativity. And when you think about that and how it applies to amateur radio as a whole, I mean, naturally you have the connectivity. You're talking to people all over the world, all kinds of places. With the control aspect, this is a very unique hobby where you virtually control pretty much the entire infrastructure of your communications platform. The radio selection, the antennas that you choose, maybe the cables or the switching, the computer, the logging programs, all of these different aspects you manage. And then that's this other element of curiosity. When you start to talk to somebody around the world or the other side of the world and spend some time talking with them, you start to realize, number one, we have a pretty common bond between us. I mean, not just the amateur radio hobby, but the fact that we're mere humans and we have the same kinds of issues in our lives, the shelter, the food, working. It's like there's really no difference, really, when it comes down to it. But that curiosity tends to stimulate things not only in the social aspect of it, but it also addresses, or it piques the technical side. How can I improve my radio communication to somebody on the other side of the world? Better antenna, maybe a radio, maybe with an amplifier, a variety of things. And that tends to drive this passion. And then the creativity aspect of this, it creates this thinking out of the box. It's kind of like, I've got this general problem with my radio or my antenna, or I can't reach this side of the world with what I've got. Then the creative juices start to flow along with input from other sources, be it something you read, something on the internet, talking to somebody on the other side of the world in terms of how they solve the problem. And you develop this interesting approach for creativity in that. So it's really kind of an interesting way to put it all. Now, the contesting aspect of that is I see all of that plus additional passion that you get for all of those different components. But what's particularly interesting is that you have an ability to measure it. You can go year by year and compare one contest weekend to another, and you can actually see your progress being made as you move forward. And that makes it, in my mind, kind of unique and kind of much more exciting to be able to monitor and measure in somewhat precise ways. Logging programs will show you what you did that previous year. Maybe the rate in which you were making contacts and all of that in certain parts of the world. And it'll tell you what frequencies you were on then. And maybe you need to think about a different strategy for the coming year. Should I be on a different band? Should I, make some other improvements to my station? So all of that the contesting aspect just feeds perfectly into that CCCC environment.
Well, I love what you're saying about problem solving, because I do think that's at the core of ham radio. A lot of people think this is, pull something off the shelf and you're on the air tomorrow, and that's not the case at all. There's always trying to figure things out, maybe missing a part and making do without it. But one of the things I've found, and I've talked to a lot of contesters, Mark, as you know, they're pushing the edges on all those things. And I've noticed that there's so much to learn from contesters. Whether you want to be a contester or not, there's so much to learn because they're pushing the edges, whether it be with logging software or antennas. They understand propagation sometimes better than anybody I know. So I've always identified contesters as, frankly, the best place to learn more about the hobby. Do you agree with that?
I would say that's kind of the leading edge in a lot of things that amateur radio can do, because we're driven by the theme of how much more efficient and productive can we be when we're doing our radio thing. It can come in the form of signal management around the table. How am I routing the signal? How am I managing the data coming into my computer over the internet? Am I optimizing this data better than other ways? And net result is you have this constant push to be better, to try and learn more, take advantage of what you learn, take advantage of what you learn from other people. This hobby is this aspect of the hobby is a very strong connection with other people, and the mentoring that goes on in that is incredible. And because everyone has this passion within this contesting community, it's very easy to get any kind of help that you might need. You have a question about something. How do I connect this up? Well, without a doubt, there's somebody in this universe that's already solved that problem, and the information's pretty near immediately available. So, it couldn't be a better time for someone new getting into the hobby, because there's so much mentoring. There's so much knowledge that's already out there that's been published, experienced. They've tried it, and if it failed, they try something new until they optimize the results. So it's really, it's an amazing time actually to do things in this aspect of the hobby.
Well, it's a perfect chance to dive in. So let's say that somebody's listening right now and they want to be a contester. What are the tools or the components, the fundamentals that people need to understand as they take that step?
I would say, of course, pretty much any basic HF radio station, or it could be VHF. But some of the tools that are out there might come in the form of, good logging programs. There are additional software applications that one can apply to your log where you can learn even more about how you did in a given time period. There's so many streams of information available if you choose to use them that enhance the whole experience and makes it even more fun. Now, one thing that wasn't said right at the onset is contesting, in my mind, is yes, it's competitive. Yes, there are some superstars out there. Admittedly, I'm not the superstar, but I've had enough fun and enough experience to say that, this is a really good thing for me to be doing. And so all these tools that are available, like I said, the software, other programs that can analyze your logs, these are things that become very useful in terms of building a strategy going forward. This would be, your basic radio station, of course, you need that. And of course, your radio computer interface, back in the day, there was no computers. Hard to believe, but back in those days, back many years when I first started, no computers. But at any rate, radio computer interface is critical. Of course, the antennas and any kind of a device that will save you time and energy in terms of the repetitive things that one does in the contest. The CQing, the sending, the exchange, that's always the same. So you can put things like that in a memory and save your voice or save time in a lot of ways. And of course, forces you to stay on a given cadence, in terms of a good steady flow. You want to send that message out to the world that, you're receiving people in a particular way, and you're processing that data, and all they have to do is just kind of sync up with that, and next thing you know, they've made your contact or made their contact.
One of the things I like about that list, Mark, is that most of us as ham radio operators have all those fundamental components. We already have them. Exactly. I have a favorite saying, just start from where you are. A lot of people put things off because they feel as though they have to make a huge investment. And granted, when you're at the Tim Duffy K3LR level of contesting is a whole different deal, but most ham radio operators have the list that you just said. So now let's take it to the next level. What additional factors would contribute to contesting success? I
would say after you get like you're absolutely correct. Whatever a basic station you've put together for however you put it together reason, that's perfectly okay. And if you think about it as a baseline, and the primary objective is to experience things, learn from those experiences, and then apply that knowledge for further growth in your station, your operating skill, whatever it might be. But probably one of the most critical things that needs to be addressed probably anywhere would be having the ability to receive signals well. Not have to contend with local noise or power line noise or some source of noise in the neighborhood or in the home that can challenge you in receiving signals. I mean, if you can't receive well, you're not going to be able to talk to these people. And there's an expression out there that says, if you can't hear them, you can't work them. Pure and simple. So one should probably look very hard about what may be noisy or what's creating noise in my station that I can then mitigate and do something about. But, the transmitting setup, a comfortable chair, because the plan is, or the plan should be, you want to spend a lot of hours sitting and doing this. And good quality headphones, things like that. Of course, that logging program I mentioned, I happen to use N1MM. Frankly, I probably use maybe 15% of all of the features that program has. It's really an incredible platform. And once I've found a revision or a version that I like, I'll stay with that, and I could stay with that for several years until somebody comes along and says, hey, we're making a change. It's going to affect this contest, and that's a contest I enjoy doing. So maybe it's time to download the latest version. But that's kind of the way I play that whole thing. You don't have to upgrade or do the new version every single week. They tend to get released every Tuesday, capturing the last set of features or desires people from the previous week wanted. So that's great, but, to each their own. Back to some other things here. I mentioned the sitting in the chair for a long time. You want to be comfortable with that. But you also want to think about maybe organizing your equipment on the desk a little differently. You think about the ergonomics. What are the things that you're going to be reaching for the most often through the course of a 24 or 48-hour event? So you want to situate those items close to you. Keyboard, maybe antenna switching, the radio, just some of the basics. Some of the things that you don't touch very often, maybe a rotator or an amplifier or some other switching things, or you need to look at a monitor, but that monitor is showing information that, you don't need, moment by moment. It could be like, the gray line you're showing, other applications that could be running there. So that's kind of the way you want to focus on that basic setup.
Well, I appreciate what you're saying about ergonomics, the chair, right? I got my restart in amateur radio through Parks on the Air. And when you go to a park and you maybe make 100 contacts and you're sitting at a picnic table, it doesn't really matter as much because you're there for 45 minutes, an hour, and you move on. But you're talking about something that's very fundamental in theory, but a lot of us don't think about it. Like, what does that chair look like? What does the desk setup look like? But it's still all within our reach. It's easy enough to do once you put some thought into it.
Right.
Mark, I want to bring up another topic that you have mentioned before in our prior interview. And actually, you refer to this a lot, situational awareness, which I love this concept. Tell us about that.
It's a huge topic. And when you think about situation awareness, you want to think about it as applying to virtually everything you're doing in contesting, or probably anything for that matter. But when it comes to the contesting side, you want to be aware of what's happening in your equipment, what's going on the air, what's happening on your frequency. Is your antenna pointed in the right direction? And different things will come into play here. But situation awareness really plays heavily to that theme of control. I mentioned at the beginning, the connectivity, the control, creativity, and the final thing was the curiosity. But on the control aspect of it, you want to be able to have easy access, a view to all of the different things that are happening that are feeding this log that you're generating as you're talking to people. This is critical in so many areas. It drives the tactical way that you're operating, the strategy. This whole world of contesting, there's so much variability in it, is you need to always have that kind of thinking that there's I need to be prepared for something coming down the road, or I need to alert myself to something's not working right, and I need to change that for whatever the outcome. And it kind of gets back to the maybe the design of the station. As simple as that. Maybe you have your equipment pulled back from the wall. The equipment is accessible from the backside, where on the fly, if you have to change something, you can very quickly get behind the desk, change things out. I know this can't be applied everywhere, but in a perfect world, that would be ideal, to be able to access everything you need immediately. And if it means going behind the desk to pull something out and make a cable change, you can do that. But again, the whole situation awareness is, when you're on the air, you're hearing people calling you. What do you think they're hearing of your station? How's the quality of my station, of the audio, or am I generating key clicks on my CW? There's so many things that you need to be aware of. And the beauty is, since you have control of all of that, that fundamental within the hobby, you have a great ability now to make corrections on the fly as you need to. So that's a very, very important thing that needs to be considered throughout the whole contesting experience.
Mark, one of the things that strikes me when you talk about situational awareness, I can pick that up by maybe listening to YouTube videos through my mentor. But I'm guessing that most of this happens when you're in the fray. You're actually in the contest and you're learning so you can improve next time. I've actually talked to contesters, and I'm sure you're one of them, that actually will do a post-contest review and make notes of what could have gone better. Do you think that's one of the better ways to create ongoing situational awareness?
Absolutely. You need to probably document wherever you can, wherever it's convenient. Make notes about what happened, and then the goal being go back and make those corrections or fix those problems. So yes, that's an important thing. It gives you a very quick handle or ability to monitor those situations that come up. And when you're on the air and you're experiencing people calling you, again, you want to be keen to what are they hearing? Am I not being as efficient as I should be? Or I'm hearing my call sign, the phonetics that I'm using are not registering at the other end. People are not hearing. I had an experience where I was in Sicily, and I operated at Italy 9 Papa, a multi-multi. It was a fantastic experience. But I discovered at one point in the contest, I was on 10 meters, and the band seemed only open to South America. For some unknown reason, the phonetics I was using, they were just not being understood. People were coming back saying, "What's your call? I don't understand. What are you saying?" And I was saying things like I 9 Papa, Italy 9 Papa. And I was getting responses, "Oh, you're Echo India 9, thinking Ireland, or, that's a prefix, of course, that's commonly out there. Italy, is it Italy 9? I mean, you're repeating the first letter in your call? No." So I immediately had to, on the fly, kind of think about different ways of solving that issue, coming with a different set of phonetics that were more in tune with the language or the interpretation that was being applied. So it was just a crazy thing. But again, situational awareness. In that experience at II9P, they were using flex radios. I'd never operated flex radios. It became, in certain aspects, there was a bit of a challenge to it in that the situation awareness, I did not feel that I had complete control over every aspect. I mean, there were things where I had to, take the mouse and go click on something in order to actuate maybe a rotator or do something. And it just kind of left me a little out of sorts. I didn't feel like I was in complete control of the environment, although I don't think it really affected the outcome of the score, but it was just a little haunting because I was so used to everything within reach, everything viewable, one button touch and something changes. And that was sort of an eye-opening experience. So this whole thing about situational awareness, it really applies in so many different ways.
Your call sign story is recalling an experience I had in St. Vincent and the Grenadines where I had the call sign Juliet 8 November Kilo India, J8 NKI. And between my admittedly weak signal because I was on the wrong part of the island, lesson learned, but also my voice, people were assuming Kilo Juliet. And I can't tell you how many times I had to correct that. So I was aware that was happening, but honestly, I didn't know how to solve it. How would you have solved that?
Maybe put a little different accent on the letter that seems to be the offending letter, or the one that fails, possibly. That's, change the phonetic, something dramatically different from the kind of the rest of the flow, but that can have a negative effect because that different phonetic may be so different that people don't get it or they might ignore it. It's something you got to think about. I went on a expedition to VP5 back 1990 something, and this was a CW worldwide contest, and I operated VP5RX was the call that I used. And I was thinking of how do I make my exchange a little different? Because here's what I was envisioning then. People tuning by, and they just catch you sending 599 8 for the zone for VP5. But instead of saying or sending 8, I changed that to O and I. So it came out as da, da, da with a slight pause, did it. And I got a few questions that would come back, but recognizing the contest logging typically fills in that data automatically. I mean, when you type in a prefix, boom, it automatically puts in presumably the correct zone number in this case. But I thought, I want to try something a little different, just to, cut down on the duplicates that might be calling, or people come along and, I'm wasting their time. I tune by and they hear da, 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 did it, the number 8. And they think, okay, this could be any number of people in the Caribbean. So I think I'll wait and see if it's a new call or a new opportunity for me. I'd never got any feedback from that, but my sense was I didn't get a lot of, repeat callers, because people started to recognize I was sending the exchange in such a unique way that it stood out from the rest of the normal, 8 people. I just kind of a anecdotal kind of a comment here, but again, I was trying to think of how can I differentiate myself, make it easier for the other operator, possibly. May create some confusion. I think I had a ZL New Zealand call me and come back, 2 or 3 times. What's OI? Da da da. Did it? I said, then I just sent it 8. To get that cleared up. But think of things like that. You'd be a little clever sometimes. People sometimes will acknowledge a contact instead of saying TU on CW. They might just hit dit. And the message is, okay, I'm finished with you. I've acknowledged the contact. I'm ready for the next one. Rather than send TU my call, which takes a finite amount of time, and just send the minimum again. I talk about minimum. That is the minimum, I think, that tell people that, I'm finished. I'm ready for the next caller. So it's all kinds of cute things that happen in the contest. They're fun.
So, Mark, one of the things we've established in this first episode is that most ham radio operators have the fundamental components in order to get into contesting. Mm-hmm. The additional things like chair and ergonomics, station setup, are all within our reach. But when you start to introduce situational awareness and thinking about how you can be better, obviously now we're brushing against time and budget. And without getting into what those things are, how should a contester, a new contester, think about time and budget and taking those next steps?
One way to look at this, I'll say moving target or growing target, is this theme that I've kind of come up with, or not come up with, I've picked it up from the industry, a continuous improvement program, CIP. You're always looking at ways to improve things. You should always be looking at what new thing can I add to this mix to give me maybe a nice step function improvement over what I was previously doing. And in this case, we're talking score production, making more contacts. Maybe it's making more contacts on a particular band. As a result, you end up building a list of things that, hey, I should address that as I move forward in this newfound interest in contesting.
Well, Mark, I think this is a great start to this series that we're doing about amateur radio contesting. I really appreciate you taking time to do this today.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
My name is Kevin Thomas. This is Q5 Ham Radio. I've been sitting with Mark K1RX. We're talking about amateur radio contesting. We're going to be back for more 73.